Attention to the Middle East, where the war shows no signs of abating. Hezbollah has warned Israel of more deadly strikes after the killing of its chief in recent years, Hassan Nasrallah. But what state do Hezbollah find themselves in? Many of Israel's strikes on its military leadership have been successful in recent months, haven't they? And last week, Louise Callahan told us of the anger that she'd seen on the ground towards Hezbollah, even in some of the regions over which they exert political control. Well, let's assess their current strength or weakness and figure out what may come next. Omar Rahman is a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs.
In terms of where Hezbollah is at the moment, I would say they're definitely on the back foot. They've taken a number of major blows to their leadership, to their operational structure. Israel has obviously conducted heavy bombardment of South Lebanon, of neighborhoods around Beirut and in the Bekaa Valley, all places where Hezbollah is strongest. At the same time, we don't know the exact situation, but I think it's fair to say that Hezbollah has found its footing to an extent. It has repelled on the ground, Israeli ground incursions of special forces. It is launching, rockets now into all parts of Israel and has been doing for days now. And so, I think there is starting to probably form some type of, operational coherence or centrality of decision making, despite the kind of the shock that Hezbollah absorbed in the first, few weeks of Israel's assault, that started with that pager operation, and then, the conduct of assassinations of its senior leadership, including Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah, and then, escalated into this, major military offensive on the country itself.
That's interesting. You feel they're finding their footing. Who is, do you think, in charge? Who are the characters who are clearly sort of filling those voids?
Well, they've had someone, Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem has become kind of the spokesperson for the organization. But I think, it's gone down to, from what they're saying, to, a council type of structure, which is what Hezbollah has always been. They have a Secretary General who was in the form of Hassan Nasrallah, and he had a predecessor before him. But when his predecessor was assassinated by Israel, it was the Shura Council, this council of decision makers, who put Hassan Nasrallah in power. It wasn't like he was deputized by his predecessor and then just assumed the role. So there is a decision making structure there that I think is still in place, and Hezbollah expects assassinations of its leadership, just like Hamas does. It's built for this kind of thing. It's resilient in that type of way. And there's always people to fill these type of roles. Hezbollah is not the same type of structure as another organization in which you could decapitate it and then it's going to fall apart.
Okay, that's interesting. How would you assess their grip on the ground in Lebanon as well, Omar? We were hearing last week from Louise Callahan, who's one of our journalists for The Times, and she is out in Lebanon at the moment, and she was speaking to and hearing from some locals who were chastising Hezbollah officials, Hezbollah fighters, Hezbollah members of Hezbollah, saying how angry they were at Israel for the destruction that they feel their bombardment has caused, but angry as well those Hezbollah leaders in their communities who have led them, who have been central to the community, who have been, overseeing education and food and, religion and all that sort of stuff in those regions, but were angry at them for also bringing this on in many ways. Mm-hmm. Hezbollah's grip in those communities and the role that they play in leading those communities is very important for it in Lebanon. How would you assess its grip or otherwise at the moment?
Yeah, its grip or gauging its strength is difficult. This is a very fluid situation in which there's been dramatic changes over just a very short period of time. At the same time, Hezbollah's obviously been weakened, but Hezbollah is one party within a country of very diverse voices, and it's never held overwhelming support or consensus support from the country. So there are going to be voices that are critical of Hezbollah, but Israel has displaced 1 million people in Lebanon in a few short weeks through this carpet bombing campaign that it's conducting, this destruction of whole villages in the south, people are moving all over the country. Whole neighborhoods have been flattened in Beirut, and so there's significant anger at Israel for what it's doing and its conduct during this war. Obviously, there was significant anger over the past year for what was happening in the Gaza Strip, and the Lebanese people understand that and see what the Israelis are doing. And I don't think there's any support for Israel's current military campaign in Lebanon. Of course, some people are going to be angry at Hezbollah for opening that front with Israel on October 8th of last year, and maybe inviting this type of thing. And they, there are a lot of people, I hear from former people in the Israeli in the Lebanese military who say this is Hezbollah's war. This is not the Lebanese military's war. So there are those kind of voices as well, but that's par for the course, I would say.
Okay, and I think I get the sense, Omar, that you're as to what your answer is going to be here, but I suppose it brings us to the big question about whether or not a pursuit of Hezbollah is even really possible. There are some who will argue that Israel simply has to try to target an organization like this in its back garden. There are those who will say that it is an idea, and as you say, it's regenerative, and therefore it is there will be no fruits to bear from this kind of pursuit. What is, on balance, what is your take?
I mean, I think there are a few things here. First of all, Hezbollah, like Hamas, is a mass movement that's rooted in a community within Lebanon that has support for Hezbollah. There are underlying grievances that give cause to its ideology and its politics and all those kind of things. So when that's the case, this is not something you can just go in and destroy with bombs. It just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened in the Gaza Strip. I mean, look at Hamas, for example. Hamas is in a situation in which it's been faced probably the most intense military bombardment in contemporary military history for the course of a year. It faced a massive ground invasion from Israel for a year. It has faced a total siege on the Gaza Strip in which food was barely getting in, let alone weapons. So there's been no supply lines into Gaza. And yet, Hamas is still, fighting Israeli soldiers on the ground. It's still occupying various areas. It's still, even on October 7th, the year after, was firing missiles at Tel Aviv. Lebanon and Hezbollah are completely different. It's a much bigger organization, a much stronger organization that is rooted in an independent country with a border with a friendly country in Syria, a supply line to Iran. And so, Israel can't just go in and destroy Hezbollah by any chance. So I don't see that as happening. It's both a mass movement and it's a significantly stronger operation than Hamas, which has survived the past year under the most,